Welcome to today's Superhuman Entrepreneur podcast. I'm so excited to introduce my guest and my friend, Chris Smith. There is a few people in the world that I feel like are the best at what they do, and Chris is one. And so I look forward to him sharing with you how you can become the best in the world and some of the things that you are. He had a big impact on my entrepreneur journey and helping me to be better and unlock my own superhuman potential. And so I know he can have that impact for you as well. In the podcast, we're going to share so much information about how we can truly unlock that possibility that you have within yourself, that possibility to not just impact the people that you want in your business, but also the possibility of what you have to show up as your best self in all areas, whether it's at home or with your kids, with your spouse, or in your business, and having that impact, and truly how you can really have that superhuman potential truly unlocked. Hello and welcome to the Superhuman Entrepreneur podcast. I am here with one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Chris Smith from Possibility.co. Chris, I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, so my first and favorite question to ask all entrepreneurs is, what do you love about being an entrepreneur?
That is such a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is that the freedom to create. I really believe that part of our identity is that we were born as creators. We were born to be creators. We were born to create for ourselves and for others. And I think it's really easy at different stages of your life to kind of have that creator identity or that creation almost in some cases kind of beaten out of you. You know, instead of thinking in terms of possibility and what you feel called to do, it's easy for the world to kind of start telling you the things that you should do and that you're supposed to do. And so I love that. To me, entrepreneurship is synonymous with freedom, creation, and just infinite possibility.
So I love that. Well, let's jump into possibility because I think that's what you're all about. So when it comes to superhuman entrepreneur skills, I know I've worked with you over time. I feel like you have built possibility into me. So tell me, what is it that you do with entrepreneurs and help them to create, to discover what's possible, figure out what's best for themselves?
Yeah, I think the first idea is realizing this kind of basic fundamental truth that we believe at the Possibility Co., which is possibility exists, but limitation is created. And that was like a download that just came to me one day, like out of nowhere. Just possibility exists, limitation is created. And as I sat with that more and really pondered the meaning of that, what I took from that and what we want to share with entrepreneurs is there has never not been possibility in the world, and there will never not be possibility. No matter how challenging life is, there's always possibility. There's always more that's possible that we can tap into. And possibility, like, there's no shelf life to it. It's never going to expire. And it's always patient. It's always kind. It's always available. And there's nothing you or I can do, Jerem, to stop possibility from existing as like a universal truth. We can limit it for ourselves, but it's always there, just ready for us to step into it or tap into it. Limitation, however, as far as I've experienced it doesn't exist until I create it. And unfortunately, a lot of times I'm good at creating my own limitations, and it's created in my thinking, it's created in my speaking. And so it's kind of interesting to think about. You can't tap into limitation because it doesn't exist. You can only create it. You can't create possibility because it already exists. You can just tap into it. And we feel like our number one responsibility with our clients as client partners, and that's what we really want to be seen as to our clients, not coaches, not consultants, but growth partners. We feel like our number one responsibility is to first help them see a bigger vision of what's possible than they can currently see. And we call it the possibility gap. And it represents the difference between what we think is possible and what's actually possible. And that, is such a part of leadership to us. And so we want to help them see what's possible in their growth as it relates to their revenue and sales, their people and their culture, and then, their leadership and their strategy.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I was attracted to you so much way back when we first met. I don't know if you remember that, but I was at an event for a bunch of doctors, Dr. Mastermind, and there was this speaker that was supposed to be the big high level, high ticket speaker that was there. And I went up to meet him after he spoke, and like, he just blew me off, and we just had a lot of connection, and I won't name his name. And so I went back into the room, and I'm like, listen to this next guy on stage. And I look up and I'm just listening to you. and just tears started running down my eyes with your message, all these things. And really, you just started to unlock possibility in me. And so, of course, afterwards, I had to go track you down, and we talked and started working together. And little did I know you lived right around the corner from where my office was. And so, yeah, so I always tell people that like you are, well, I feel the best in the world at helping people unlock this possibility and figuring out what's inside of them.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, no, and I love that. Like, and that's the thing. You never know. And I think we dramatically underestimate the power of speaking a little bit of possibility into people, because it's so rare, sadly, in the world we live in today. Most people don't have someone who's consistently speaking possibility into them and helping them think bigger about what's possible. So if you start to do that in your company with your team, you start to do that with your clients, patients, customers, you're going to be one of the only people who's doing it, and thus they're going to see you as a leader, and they'll follow you anywhere.
Yeah, I do. And especially in the health world that I'm in, I feel like so many people just don't believe that possibility that's there. Oh, it's just genetics, or disease happens to me, or this or that. And it's always happening to you. Health is happening to you rather than something you create and what's possible, and that amazing potential that you have to be healthy and to, health. There's no limits to health, just like there's no limits to what you can do in your business, what you can do in your family, what you can do in your marriage. It's unlimited to what we can accomplish.
Yeah, and I love the health and wellness space, as you know, and I'm super. It's been a transformative thing for my own family, and for my personal health. And look, Western allopathic traditional medicine has its place. It serves its purpose, and at the same time, it has created a ton of limitation around what people think is possible for their health. And sadly, it's convinced a lot of people that, oh, if I don't feel well, or if I'm sick, or if I'm not in the health I want, I should just expect to go get a quick fix in the form of a pill or a shot. And people just kind of buy into that and think, well, I guess that limitation is what's possible. And it's like, no, there's so much more that's possible in this natural world of health, right? That you're an expert in. And so that alone is this idea of health. It's a really easy example to point at, that people are either pursuing what's possible and stepping into possibility around their health, or they're living in limitation, and sometimes without even knowing that's what's happening.
Yeah. So tell me, because we're trying to help entrepreneurs to unlock this potential that they have. So I know that health has been important for you and fitness has been important for you. So kind of, quick summary, what's been that journey for you, and how has that helped you be better as an entrepreneur and be better as a dad and be better as a husband and all that?
So I would say I've always had an interest in lifting weights and working out. And I thought that was health. I was the guy that was like, yeah, I'm healthy. I get a smoothie and a muffin from Starbucks in the morning, yeah. So I was like, there were some parts of it that I think were useful, like active working out, lifting weights. And I was a financial advisor, and I worked for a wealth management firm, and we had a lot of success. And that's what actually had me start my coaching consulting company. Because of the success we'd had in this industry, I felt really called to go help other people have success like that. So we're coaching and consulting financial advisors, wealth management firms. And then out of nowhere, a friend of mine says, hey, do you think the work you do with financial advisors, wealth management firms would carry over into other service-based businesses? And I was like, yeah, of course. And he said, well, there's an incredible woman who's a client of mine named JJ Virgin, and I'd like to make an introduction because I told her about some of the work you were doing for us, and she is interested. So, for those of you who don't know, most of you probably do. JJ Virgin is a really incredible thought leader and entrepreneur in the world of health and wellness, and has written some incredible books. I think a couple New York Times bestsellers. So I know nothing about the natural, holistic, functional world of health and wellness and medicine. So I work with JJ and her team, and she goes, oh, you got to come speak at the Mindshare Summit. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. So I show up, maybe like 350, 400, incredible thought leaders, experts, all in the, again, natural, whole, wellness space. And at first I was like, I don't know if these are the weirdest people I've ever met in my life or the coolest, or a combination of both, because I come from a ranching rodeo background. I show up at this event. They're like putting charcoal toothpaste in my mouth, vegan organic deodorant on me. And I'm like, what is going on? And so at that event, I think I might have had a short keynote and then a larger breakout session. But either way, we made our offer. We literally had like 3 or 4 dozen healthcare practitioners become clients overnight.
Yeah.
and sign up to come work with us. And so they were, and what we found, it was a really unique fit because that industry, as you know, and as so many of you listening, you have something that's life-changing, that's transformative, that the world needs to know about. And yet also a lot of healthcare practitioners really struggle to articulate how powerful what the gift they have to offer the world. Well, that's one of the biggest things we solve for. So it was this perfect marriage. And then I just couldn't deny, Jeremy, I couldn't deny the stories that I was hearing, right? Of healing, of reversing chronic disease and chronic illness and giving people their lives back. And I finally just told my wife, I was like, there's really something to this. And so we started reading some of those books. One of my sons at the time was struggling with some health issues, and we'd taken him to a couple different traditional pediatricians. They just wanted to give, antibiotics, inject him with steroids. And then we took him to an integrated pediatrician who had recently been a client. She changed a couple things in his diet. Everything went away. So that was another confirmation to us. So we started switching out the cleaning products in our home, switching out toothpaste, deodorants, being more aware of our environment, totally started changing the way we eat. Before I even felt the physical benefits, just the emotional and mental benefits of knowing that I was being intentional about my health, which I think sometimes we underestimate just how good it feels to know you're trying to be intentional. And then as I started to feel physically better, mentally better, and I've said this before, I believe that how you bring yourself to your health is actually a microcosm of how you're bringing yourself to every single area of your life, whether you know it or not. Like how you show up to your health is having an effect on how you're showing up in your marriage, your leadership, your business, your entrepreneurship. So now selfishly, it's like, I don't want to stop because it's such a life force generator. It's a force field for every area of my life. Like I'm a better husband, a better father, a better entrepreneur, a better leader because of how I bring myself to my health. And it's like, it's like the most effective drug known to man. It's like absolutely free. It doesn't have to cost anything if you don't want it to.
So yeah, there's so many things there. And yeah, I am 100% on board with that, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And so and I see this, and I think about this all the time too. And you've come across entrepreneurs that, number wise, business wise, seem super successful, but they're just not taking care of themselves. And you just wonder how much bigger of an impact that person could have if they could show up for themselves and level that up. What are they going to be able to achieve if they do?
Totally. And like, I don't know how deep, we can go on this, but like, we're literally made of energy.
Yeah.
Like we are energy. Well, so if I am energy, well, then the amount of energy I then give myself and create, like, obviously that is a generator out there in my life. And so the less healthy I am, no matter how big of a desire I have to be a great husband, father, wife, mother, entrepreneur, I just don't have the energy to. And that's like, ultimately what they're finding causes disease is when your body doesn't have the energy to repair itself and fight back. That creates chronic illness and chronic disease. And so, and look, I my heart just goes out to people. Like we took our two youngest to Disneyland recently and left the three others, at home, which they weren't super happy about. We're like, no, it's just for the two bees, we call them, the two babies. I could not believe the number of people at Disneyland I saw that are probably around my age. They couldn't ride rides. Like they could barely walk around. And so it's almost just too, like, I told my wife just the other day, I will be 85 and still going on hikes with my grandkids. I'm just committed to that. Like I want to be around, for my families, so.
Well, and I think where things going with health, you're going to be 125 and be doing that same thing. So
Yeah.
But okay. All right. So you're going to shift topics just a little bit on this, because one of my favorite quotes and kind of one of our standards with Superhuman Entrepreneur podcast is that there is no success in the world that will overcome failure in the home. And I know I've seen you and your wife and how you have set up your family for success and parenting and your marriage. I know it's a big part of your message that you share too. And I'll definitely, I think we're going to do a series on parenting and raising kids. And so we'll definitely have your wife on for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what comes to your mind with that quote?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, if you don't take a stand for what you're if you don't take a stand for what your family stands for, the world will. So either you're going to define what your family stands for and be very intentional and do it by design, or it's going to be done for you. And there's no gray area in that. It's not like hey, Jesus, take the wheel and hope it all turns out. There's just too many influences in the world today and too much influence on social media. And even if you are being very intentional about what your family stands for, you're still up against more forces and more voices and more noise than we've ever had in the history of the world. That's just going to get louder. And I can tell you, for me, Jeremy, it comes more naturally to me as an entrepreneur to be intentional in my business than it does in my home. So it's like I have to work extra to be intentional in my home than I do in my business. And I heard a great quote one time by a friend of mine, Richard Lidner, where he said, as entrepreneurs, it's easy for our family to get what's left of us instead of the best of us. So it's almost like our clients, our patients, our team gets the best of us. And then whatever scraps are left over, it's like, okay, family, feast on these scraps that are left over. And I'm not saying, I also think we could give ourselves some grace sometimes, that it's never going to be a perfect balance. But I typically don't like to operate out of fear around anything, but there is one fear I have that I think motivates me and it's healthy. And that is, I just do not want to wake up 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now and just wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I missed it. Like I had this one chance while my children were in my home and I missed it. And that doesn't mean you still can't repair that to some degree and still be a great parent later in life, but it's just, and so that motivates me to be like, no, be here now. And there's always that balance between scaling a business, but also scaling your family, which I think is an interesting way to think about your family. I can only be a parent while my children are in my house for a certain period of time. I have the rest of my life, though, to continue to be an entrepreneur and make a difference and grow and scale. And most entrepreneurs I talk to, like, retirement isn't a thing anyways. It's like, but I think sometimes we feel this urgent pressure around like, oh, I'm so far behind as an entrepreneur and I got to get ahead and I got to be bigger and I got to scale and do more. It's like, there's going to be time to continue to do that. I'm not saying don't do that, but there is an infinite amount of time that your kids are going to be in your home. And I also don't think parenting stops when your kids, are out of your home, but also like what you talk about how you bring yourself to your health impacts every area of your life. I would say the only thing maybe that does that even more is what is taking place or not taking place in your marriage and your home and those relationships just has a massive ripple effect in your life and out there in the world. And last thing I'll say to that is I used to really think a lot about, probably like most parents, like what kind of world are we leaving to our kids? And that would kind of bring on some limitation, actually. When I think about that, it would have me kind of think in fear and limitation. And then I shifted that thought to, no, what kind of children am I leaving to this world? And that has me think like impossibility and like, I want to leave children to this world who know who they are, believe in who they are, love who they are, have a strong sense of identity and self-worth and, are leaders.
I think that's really key. And I try to do that with my girls too. Hey, Dr. J here. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and like the information that we're providing, be sure to subscribe and leave a review and like the podcast because it helps us to be able to expand our reach to find other entrepreneurs. Your support helps us to reach other entrepreneurs and help us to help them truly unlock their superhuman potential and make the world a better place. Let's get into kind of some more of the details of that. What habits have you built? What systems do you put in place to ensure that you can show up and your family doesn't get the scraps, that they get the best?
Well, you hinted to my wife, so I don't want to steal too much of her thunder, which I actually know how to say it. She'll say it way better than me anyway, so I won't be stealing her thunder. And you can't hear this enough. She has taken and created a version of kind of the possibility company, the work we do with entrepreneurs and companies. She's created a version of it for families called Family Brand and has a really awesome podcast, has a book coming out here soon. But it's like, why do we do some of these why do we follow so many of these principles of success in business and then not translate them over into families and homes? If they work in business, they'd work in families and homes. And so it's like, so she helps families create an identity for their family that's really intentional. Like, who are we? That includes their mission, vision, values. She gives them these daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually rhythms and cadences, just like you have rhythms and cadences in a business. And so I would say that one of the biggest things that we've done to try and be intentional is our family values and having that shared language. And our family values aren't something we just created one time and it's like, oh, cool, like check. We talk about them daily, if not weekly. There's some discussion around like, hey, is that who we are? Is that how we show up as Smiths? And then I would say another thing that moves the needle for us in a massive way, maybe more than two things. We eat a lot of family meals together. Like no matter what's going on, now there's times where it's easier than others, but even then times where it's not easy, when everyone's in a sport, it's like my wife really leads this and I try to lead as well. And there's so much compelling research about just mealtime. Like they've done studies where they didn't track any other dynamic in the home other than how many meals they ate. And they could predict just by the number of meals a family ate together with no distractions, they could predict teenage pregnancy, drug use, suicide rates, depression, just from meals. So that's one thing. And then another thing is we do what we call weekly check-ins. And my wife has a really awesome system that I think she has even a free lead magnet around this, where every single Sunday, each one of our kids comes in and meets with my wife and I 2-on-1. And we follow this check-in and just checking in with them. Like, how are you doing? Tell us about your life. How can we support you this next week? What's important to you? And so just having a regular cadence around meals and that check-in, there's a lot of other things, but those two are massive for us.
Yeah, those are big. Because being able to have that connection with parents is key. You know, we talked about this world that our kids are going to be going off into. We need to make sure that they have that good connection, and we've at least taught them those important things, like you said, their identity, who they are, loving themselves. That's so key. Yeah. Then what about for your marriage? I mean, we talked about your wife already a little bit. She's going, we'll get her on in the future already, for all those people that are like already stopping this and going to look up Family Brand. Come back. We'll get her on in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about your marriage? Because one of the things that we also focus on is, or believe that the marriage is the best place where you can grow as an individual. That's something special about that relationship that doesn't exist anywhere else, just in that relationship. So
Yeah. It's like, I love that quote. If you think you're enlightened, go spend some time with your family. And that'll really test how your enlightenment and your patience and your unconditional love. You know, my wife will probably share a bit more of this story, but 15 years ago, my wife and I were actually separated, actively working out a divorce. And we had 2 beautiful little boys at the time. And luckily for us, just miracles from God, an amazing marriage counselor, and my wife's leadership, we decided to fight for our marriage and saved it. And now we have 5 children, and it's really beautiful what we've created. But I think we got so close to ending it that kind of scared us, and realized like how easy it was to take each other for granted. So we committed 15 years ago that we would go on a date every single week. And man, truly, aside from being out of town and away from each other, I bet I can count on one hand the amount of weeks we've missed date night in 15 years. And there's a lot of, and since we saw the profoundness of that and how much that had to do with the repairing of our marriage and like almost like getting to know each other again. And when it stood out to me, Jerem, was like, there was a few years after our separation where, we were in a good spot. We were home one night and it was Saturday night, and one of our kids goes, "Hey, you guys haven't been out on a date yet this week. When you guys got to go on a date?" And I was like, oh, like, I love that our kids are seeing that. Because I demonstrate a lot of things to my kids that I'm sure that aren't useful, but that was one. But my wife went on to do some research because it stood out so much. And there's tons of research out there that supports this idea of like, man, I would really encourage you to make date night non-negotiable. And even if it doesn't have, even if it can't be fancy, which it doesn't have to be. So that's one. And then second, my wife and I, after we do the kids check-ins every Sunday, she and I do a check-in with each other. Hey, what's present for you in your life? How are you doing? What's important to you this next week? How can I support you? And then she does the same. I would also say Melissa's really good at causing us to have some type of connection every day. Because it's so easy when you have 5 kids and all of them are in sports and school and you both have businesses to just like pass each other in the day or the night and feel like roommates, she will make sure like every day, 2 or 3 times a day, we do 8-second hugs. Cause it'd be easy just to walk past each other and she'll like, stop me, and I'm trying to get better at stopping her. But I would say date night and then the weekly check-ins and then just trying to create some mini connections throughout the day have been awesome for us.
So, no, that's so important. There's a good quote. I won't say the whole thing because I'll mess it up, but the founder of Netflix has a really good quote. He's like, I'd much rather, be the guy that, goes on date night. He does Tuesday nights or his date night. And he's like, it's sacred time, all those things. And that's so key. If the CEO of Netflix, who's running this, multi-billion-dollar company, can still do date night every week with his wife, I think, no matter where we are on the spectrum of just beginning entrepreneur to successful, high level entrepreneur, we can make that date night happen. And I know that's important for me and my wife too. My wife is also super amazing. I definitely would not be where I am today without her. Just like I know I've heard your story, you wouldn't be where you are today without your wife. Obviously,
Yeah.
we talked about her like half the time. So
Yeah. Well, and a pro tip on that, for what it's worth, that helped us be way more consistent, is having a set night. Because if it comes every week, it's like, oh, I have the intention to, we'll do it one of these nights. It's so easy to like have the week go.
yeah,
And our nights have changed. At times we've done week nights because we were like, wow, it's like easy to get into restaurants or wherever we want to go. And then other times it's been like, but your probability of doing them consistently and having them be non-negotiable will go up dramatically if they're at a set day and time, if that's possible for you. Or on Sunday, get it on the calendar for a day or a night if it's not possible. And I think a lot of times people don't realize you can do a lunch date. And that can be your date night. It doesn't have to be at night.
yeah, for sure. Okay. All right. So, and from my perspective, this is the most interesting thing. The best part about being an entrepreneur is to be able to create, the family and the marriage and the things that you want. But let's go back to business side of things. So let's say that a entrepreneur, they're might be just starting out, or they've hit a plateau, and they're having trouble communicating to be able to find those ideal clients, those ideal customers, those ideal patients, whatever they are. I know this is kind of your sweet spot, your bread and butter, be able to get that message out. So let's go back to that. Where do you focus? How do you help people to achieve those goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you would think that the place we might start is, messaging, communication. Let's get your pitch right, your script right. We actually don't start there. We actually start with identity. We had this conversation about like, well, who are you? In a way that's different and unique than every single other person in your industry. Because look, if you're a service-based business, which probably most people listening to this are, coaches, healthcare practitioners, it's so easy to become a commodity and be commoditized, which is the last thing you want. The last thing you want is to look and sound like everyone else and have everyone think like, oh yeah, you're just another doctor, or you're just another coach. It's like, no, I want to stand out. I want to differentiate myself. I want to have there be something really unique about me. We actually approach that through identity. And so one of the things that we always say to entrepreneurs is you really want to create an identity that's bigger than your industry. And you want to see those as two different things. Because a lot of times we take our identity on as though it's who we are, to our detriment. So it might be easy to say like, well, I'm a functional medicine doctor. I'm a healthcare practitioner. And I always push back, and our team pushes back and goes, no, that's what you do. That isn't who you are. Because if you think about it, that might be one of the most commoditized things you could actually say is, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm a healthcare practitioner, I'm a financial advisor. It's like, but so without knowing it, we kind of commoditize ourselves because we inadvertently make our identity all about our industry. Thus, we look and sound like everyone else, but not on purpose. So a lot of entrepreneurs are like, whoa, I've never even thought about that. A lot of companies we work with are like, I've never even really thought about that my identity and my industry are two different things. I want to be able to talk about both of them powerfully. So it's kind of like there's also a difference between what you do and who you are. So what we found, Jerem, is if we can really spend a lot of time on this identity of who you are and crack the code on that and have them be like, whoa, yeah, that is who I am. That then becomes the lens and the filter through which we shape all of the messaging, the positioning that has them stand out and really attract the people that they feel most called to serve. But it's easy not to do that work because it's a little bit more confronting. And I always kind of make this joke with healthcare practitioners who are in the alternative natural side of things. I'm like, you would never have patient who comes to see you and you ask them, hey, well, what are your symptoms? And then at the end of the meeting, prescribe a medication to just go treat the symptoms. They're like, well, of course not. We would really get down to the root cause, find out what's really going on, ask a lot of questions, do a lot of deep confronting work. And so then I was kind of push back on them and poke at this. And I say, but that's the very opposite of what a lot of you do when it comes to your own messaging. You take a very Western allopathic symptoms-based approach to your messaging and marketing and positioning, which is like, oh, my messaging is not working. Let me throw some marketing at it. Well, that's like, I have a symptom over here. Let me just throw a pill at it or a drug and hopefully it works. It's like, no, let's take a root cause approach. Let's do some more deeper confronting work, which I get it's confronting. And let's ask some really confronting questions like, yeah, what are we known for? What could I be the best in the world at? What is this really about for me? Because man, once we crack the code on that clarity, everything actually becomes quite simple and easy, because it's like that becomes, again, the lens and the filter through which we create all the messaging.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. And that best in the world, I love that idea because, there's everyone's world is different size. It could be like if you are an HVAC company, you could have a city that's your world and be the best in just
Totally.
AC company in Indianapolis, or you could be, the best roofer in Cleveland or whatever. And that could be your world. And you could dominate and I have entrepreneurs that I work with that are in home service industries that create amazing, gigantic businesses in those small little worlds,
Yeah.
and then expand it throughout. And so, but I love that idea because I do see the people that are able to accomplish that and get out of the commodity world are able to succeed. And I love to hear your thoughts on this too, because as soon as you become a commodity, it's like a race to the bottom when it comes to profit and price.
Oh, yeah. Like when you're a commodity, then yeah, it's a race to the bottom. You have to compete on price. It's like you start doing a lot of things that don't even feel aligned with you. Like you're not honoring yourself. And look, a lot of people kind of get hung up on this when we first work with them on this. And this is one of the first questions we actually ask someone when they become a client of ours is like, what are you the best in the world at? Or what are you committed to becoming the best in the world at? And it's fascinating to me that whether they're a solopreneur or a massive organization, 95% of them, when we ask them that question, they immediately go, oh, I'm not the best in the world at anything. Like I could never be the best in the world. Like that would be way too bold, way too egotistical. Like there's people out there that are bigger than me, that are better than me. So it's funny that when we ask them, what are you the best in the world at? Or what are you committed to being the best in the world at? They immediately go into scarcity, lack, limitation, comparison. And it's like, well, no. And we don't preface any of this because we let them kind of have that experience. And then we say, well, I didn't ask you in comparison to anyone else. Because the last time I checked, there's only one of you. So it's like, you could be the best in the world at serving the people only you can serve and the way you can serve them in the area you can serve them. And there's room for everyone to be the best in the world. This isn't like a zero-sum game where it's like where it truly is a commodity where like I take and there's less for everyone else. It's like, no, the more people we have stepping into their power and their potential and their possibility, it creates more abundance and possibility, for everyone. And it's like, maybe there's no way to ever even measure if you're the best in the world at it. But man, what a worthy thing to pursue. Maybe I can never even prove that I'm the best in the world, but just the pursuit of that. And it's the furthest thing from ego. It's not like, oh, look at me, I'm the best in the world. It's, man, if I really am committed to trying to be the best in the world at something, what that really translates to is I'm going to help way more people and I'm going to make a way bigger impact on those people. So it's really an unselfish pursuit. And I'm not racing to the bottom in limitation. I'm actually like racing to the top in possibility.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just like the thought came to mind, like we're both in Arizona. If your AC breaks and it's the middle of the night, the best in the world is the one that's going to show up at midnight and fix your AC
Totally.
unit. And so you can absolutely, there is room for every single person to be the best in the world at who they are. So I just want to talk a little bit more. I think I told you this too, but every time I prep a talk that I'm going to give, I go back to my Chris Smith program so I can redo and get some new thoughts, some new possibility built in. So I'm in the process of doing that again. So I was listening to you all day, the last couple of days, to build my new presentation. But one thing that I love that you bring into attention, and you even just mentioned it, you talked about that being the best in the world. What does that true impact end up being? So yes, like I work with a client and help them to feel better, just like you work with a business owner and help them to improve. But then that has multiple layers of impact. And I love thinking about that. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I want to work with entrepreneurs, because if I up level them, then their businesses up level, all their employees, benefit, all the people they serve benefit. So I love that idea.
Yeah. I call it the difference makes. And where this first occurred to me was, I mentioned I went and spoke at Mindshare Summit. One of the people in the audience that signed up to become a client on the spot was an integrative pediatrician, the one who helped my son. So she comes, we help her create an identity that's bigger in her industry, help her be, step into this idea of being the best integrative pediatrician in the world in her area, help her with her message, like everything we do for our clients. Well, because I'm now starting to become more involved in this, health and wellness space, I'm at another conference 6 months later or so speaking, and she comes up to me and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, Chris," and gives me this huge hug. And she's like, "Thank you so much for the work we did together." She's like, "My revenue's up 30%. I have finally had the capacity to like bring on other team members. I've scaled. I've got more time. I'm writing my book. I got a book deal because of the, you know, the process you and I created, so it's like all this good stuff." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." I was like, "My pleasure, thank you." And then she looks at me and she comes and gives me another hug. And she's like, "No, really, thank you." And so I was like messing with her and I was like, "No, really, you're welcome. Are we going to keep hugging, and telling each other thank you and you're welcome?" And then she pulls back, she squeezes both of my arms and she's like, "Chris, I don't think you realize, because of the impact of your work, I'm going to reach thousands of more children in my lifetime than I would have. And you're now part of that." And I was like, whoa. And it's as silly as it sounds, I had never really considered that. Meaning, like, I knew that every client, of course, that came to work with us, every business owner was going to go back and do something. And I would even hear the success stories, like 30%, growth, like doubled our business, like what biggest month ever, like all this stuff. But I never really translated it for whatever reason to like real lives. But when she said, "I'm going to reach thousands of more children in my lifetime, and you're now part of that," and I considered like, "Oh, my son is one of those because you helped him." I was like, "Oh, I've been looking at this in a really limited way. This is not about the difference I make for the person in front of me. It's actually about the difference they go make because of the difference I made for them." So that's where this idea of the first time I'd ever had that thought, it's the difference makes. Because if I just look at the difference I'm making, one level, it's still okay. We're reaching at this point in the Possibility Company hundreds of entrepreneurs and companies a year. But now multiply 100 by even 50 or 100. It's like, man, every one of us with our, with our businesses is actually making a pretty significant ripple. And I think it's really useful to look at your business that way, because when you start considering the difference makes, it has you maybe step into a more bold possibility of like, wow, my work really matters. It really is reaching thousands of people.
It's wonderful to think. And really, that's why, like, my thought for the superhuman entrepreneurs is we are the superheroes. Us entrepreneurs are the superheroes that are going to change the world. It doesn't matter, who's in the White House, who's in, what Senate seat is filled, all these politics. Politics is 20 years behind entrepreneurs at least.
Yeah.
But because I was thinking about that today a little bit as I'm doing my presentation, really everything you look at is there because of an entrepreneur. And that's the world that we live in, is driven, and progress happens, growth happens with entrepreneurs. And so
Totally.
I love seeing that ripple effect. I love, what us superhuman entrepreneurs can do. And all of us have our little niche where we all help to make things happen. So that's wonderful. All right. So last thing, what do you think is your greatest superhuman entrepreneur power?
Mhm.
I want you to brag here now. So
Yeah. It's my ability to help people see what's actually possible in every area of their life. And I just know that's my life's mission and purpose. My life's mission and purpose is to speak as much possibility into as many human beings as I can in one lifetime. And I believe I can do it for anyone. That's another thing. I don't have anything around that anymore. Like if the president of the United States was sitting in my office right now, I know I could make a difference for them. And I don't see anyone, and I wouldn't see the president of the United States any differently than, a construction worker, right? Like, and when I say my ability to speak possibility into people and help them see what's actually possible, it also, like, that really starts with, I truly believe I can help people realize that they really do matter, that they really are enough, that they really do belong. they really are worthy and that their life really does have meaning and purpose. Because once you tap into that, anything's possible. But until you do tap into that, you're going to either have something to prove for the rest of your life that'll never be able to fill that void because it's operating from a place of I'm not enough, so I got to go prove a bunch of stuff. Or you'll never even get out there to try to prove yourself because, again, I'm holding back. So like the ultimate possibility to me is when people realize that they're enough, that they matter, they belong, and they're worthy, and they always have been. God created them that way.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm sure you have a lot of people intrigued and wondering, how can I find this Chris Smith guy? How can I untap this possibility in me? So how can someone catch up with you, follow up with you?
Yeah. If you would love to, talk to us and learn more about what we do in any capacity, if you go to just psblty.com, that's, short for possibility. And sometimes people ask us like, okay, I kind of get it now, PSBLTY, but why did you decide to spell it that way? And it's because possibility, again, it exists, but it's not always going to be spelled out for you. You have to have eyes to see it. Possibility is everywhere if you're looking for it, if you have eyes to see it. And so if you go to psblty.com, you can find out more about what we do. And we'd love to speak some possibility into you, like whatever that looks like.
And that's how you become superhuman. How you show up with your health is a reflection of how you show up in all areas of your life. Third action step is we need to be intentional with your family habit. If you're married, talk with your spouse and figure out how you can start implementing one of the things that Chris talked about, or something else that came to your mind while we're talking about that in your life, whether it's a regular weekly date night with your wife, or even if you're not doing any date nights, twice a month. You start with something simple and start implementing. You enjoying the podcast? Help us reach more entrepreneurs like you by leaving a review. As a thank you, everyone who leaves a 5-star review will be entered into a drawing for some exciting prizes. We are here to help you more than just listen. Head over to superhumanentrepreneur.com, click on community, and join a powerful network of entrepreneurs that are striving to be their best. Each episode includes action steps, resources, and accountability to help you to implement these ideas and start seeing results.